they really need is to try and keep a steady lookout, see if they can build up a little bit more surge. Only 86 above from what we last saw. And with some of the shifting elevation that could be introduced pretty soon here based off how the zone pools, that is only going to add further complications for some of these teams that are just hovering above that surge metric.
I was talking to Queasy yesterday, and I was asking him how he felt about the Heat 2 of EU, and he said, hey, don't sleep on my boy Trulex, man. I think Trulex is going to cook up today. And now Trulex sits in pole position to play height for this endgame. And with some of the best players in this lobby in a heap of trouble here, Scroll has already lost Sky and is down on Surge. There is an opportunity here for somebody to come through and steal this game away.
Never takes Scroll long, though, to connect some shots. That accuracy is going to buy him a little bit of time, and undeterred, even as a solo, he'll opt to still try and make his way towards the high ground, understanding that that'll be one of his best opportunities to try and fight, try and avoid some of the lower layer congestion too. Much harder to try and control that frontside low when you are a solo. So instead, from secondary height, trying to gauge whether or not there is going to be another opportunity for a refresh. Pink on her wrist, hovering just outside the mid ground though, just steadily breaking apart here as Fred and Medius will take out Trulex on the high ground. Faded, left to fend for himself.
That's one of them positions where it almost feels like you're playing some realistics. And in a realistic 1v1 for height between Marius and Trulex, I know who I'm picking every day of the week. Marius and Fred now hold the keys to win this game. They're up above with plenty of mats to work with. All the loot they could ask for, it's just about the execution now.
And this is starting to be a little bit more the looks that teams might have expected. Fred joining alongside. Deemish Darm, though, they're looking to be titans of the low ground. Janice losing racks there is a pretty steep blow, especially when you're already 55 below. And there is just no stoppage. No time to sit and think. Janice just has to keep moving forward, but with Surge taken away and the lobby looking your direction, just doesn't have the time he needs. Fortunately, Surge will turn off, but just such limited HP to work with.
Yeah, it's really not looking good for Janice. You've got to think the second anyone sniffs him out, it will be the end of the road for him. But already this endgame is shaping up so nicely, Taco, and these are the types of games we love in EU because it's such a different flavor to what we saw in game one. So many different teams and players having an impact. Yanis gets a shot onto the toes of Deemish there between the builds. So he's gonna leave, not leaving with much, but those 4 eliminations will add up nicely as far as consistency goes. And we'll see whether or not Marius and Fred will have the ability to hold on here. You've already seen people looking to chop them out. Dandapuzo and Azat want to take height off of them, and we've seen Dandapuzo with many successful height takes over the years, but this one won't be easy.
This could be very big, though, for Prodoxy and Medius. A lot of material that Dandapuzo was carrying. If they're able to successfully convert that into some eliminations, that could be a big refresh for them to continue holding height. Darm Deemish, 180 of the situation, ultimate low, and Darm has fallen. Deemish now starting to get tagged up along the way. Doesn't even get a chance to try and play for the heal, but does get the knock onto Catch Me, and that just could be the difference maker here. Won't be able to make it to the body just yet. Doesn't have any material stuck inside of his cone temporarily, but maybe be able to collect Catch Me's teammate. Even going for the revive as Yapko will be picked off. Separated just a little bit too briefly from Panzer, and the seconds you spend away from your duo, that's all it takes for things to collapse. Catch Me was back up in the running, but it was such a limited run here. So many players just looking back from the backside of zone.
Yeah, Panzer was just desperately looking for any loot he could grab. He's so poor down below, but up above, Hedra and Lixium not working with a wealth of riches, just the 2 builds remaining. Everybody in this lobby struggling now. It feels like nobody has any materials. Have to just pick up some Siphon wherever you can. And Marius has lost Phredoxy. And he has lost the high ground, but he hasn't lost his spirit. He's going to keep on trudging through this game until he gets cut right down. Mustache in a similar predicament. Has enough time, though, to actually regain some HP.
And the shield restoration. Mustache, what have you got in store for us? Making his way towards that front side. Looking up, definitely aware of the fact that there is duo up ahead, but Lixium has fallen. Not sure if that was a chop or just a well-placed shot from Larix, and Larix even not even gonna get the chance to take off from the siphon. Unfortunately, even with all of these Chug Jugs at his feet, it's only going to be Maldis left to try and play them over. But Mustache, he's taking matters into his own hands. 4 eliminations already, now in control of height. There are only so many solos left to try and contend with here. Maldis now gonna look to potentially try and challenge Mustache, but with that Mystic Pistol up top, this could be Mustache's time to strike, Levin.
Dinas and Frenic are going to be the duo standing in his way. Like you said, just solos remaining outside of that, and the power of the duo is too much to bear. Dinas and Frenic will be the ones to take game 2.
Definitely a really solid run there, though, for Mustache and Tasten. Bound to push them up some placements on that leaderboard later on. And just a really good catalyst opportunity, really, to see what else they've got in store for us. But, of course, Dinas and Frenic securing their spot in the Major 2 Grand Finals. Frankie, Mini, Takata, let's hear it.
Thank you very much, guys. Dinas and Frenic, they're not unfamiliar names by any stretch, but in a lobby that contains 6 duos who made top 10 in Major 1, it's really pleasing to see these guys take a victory royale. And against Mustache, no less, Takata. What an ending.
It's a tough heat. It's a tough heat. They got 8th place in the first game. They're sitting at 12th on the leaderboard going into this match, but closing it out on a win is what you want to do. They only had 1 elimination in the game before this, so they were able to get more than enough refreshes this time around to put themselves up in a good position, Mini.
Yeah, it was a really nicely played endgame for these guys. Ultimately, of course, they were the only duo left in a sort of sea of solos. So in those situations, it can be a lot. It can be quite easy to sort of get ahead of yourself and try and like W key a lot of the solos and just try and force the game to close. But what they did really well was just stay on that low ground. They looked at the same player. They were spraying up. I think it was Mustache there at the end, wasn't it, that they took out at the very end just to close out that win. But this is a team that we've seen in major finals before. We've seen them performing pretty well. Never had those like absolute heights that we know that these guys definitely have the potential for. But maybe now this is their season, and throughout the entire endgame, Takata, the way they played that low ground was really, really strong as well.
Yeah, and this is a pretty tough heat. You know, it's not as tough as yesterday's, but it's up there. So being able to get the job done is impressive. They didn't even need too many eliminations at all, as you can see. The main thing, like you said, Mini, is they were both up. They held on to the chemistry. They didn't over-aggress high ground. We saw Fred was up there for a second with Marius. A bunch of retakes came through. Mustache as a solo picked it up, was clutching for a while. But in the end, what mattered was having your teammate up.
It's really impressive when you think about the names that were hunting on the low ground. Yes, Scar and Squad had a difficult game. They might not have been there, but you still had the likes of Demus and Dom and Giannis and Rax trying to stake their claim on this lobby. And they may very well do that because we still have 3 more games to go. Mini Minor, do you think that we're going to see some unknowns maybe popping up with the next VR after the break?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. You know, you saw that low ground was a bit more open that game. We didn't have Sky and Squirrel making it quite as far as we'd expect them to. Same with Demus and Dom, didn't quite make it into those later stages of the game. Our usual low ground kings just weren't there. So taking advantage of that moment, it's like teams that go up for height now, you know, taking advantage of the fact that Vico and Malabuka aren't in the lobby is going to be super duper important. So we saw a lot more height action there. We saw a lot more retakes happening. So I expect to see the same in this next game.
Well, this is Europe. This is not Summit. So the low ground could be king for these duos. Let's head to a break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about Game 2. My gosh, these heats go so fast. We've only got 3 more games to go, but let's talk about game number 2. Yes, I know, Takara. I see that side eye. It's like 11-2K is back on the desk with me. Let's take a look at page 1 of the leaderboard. Remind ourselves of where we're at. Game 1 was taken by Vico and Malabuka. Game 2 by Dinas and Frenex. So that's why they're in 1 and 2. So really, we should be looking at 3 to 12 now. These are the duos who are in contention for making it to the grand finals next weekend. Put some respect on Harissa's and Pink's name, please, because they're currently in 5th. But can they be consistent in that one? We'll have to wait and see. But that's a great start for them, so bias shout out to them. Also, though, if you look at 10th, Merstash and Tayson going up a whopping 21 places. We'll return to them in a moment because I want to take a look at page number 2. Because we saw in the end game early height taken by Fredoxy and Marius. It was kind of blink and you've missed where they've gone because it was all going so well until it wasn't. But Mini Miner, it's good to see that these guys are starting to gain some momentum.
Well, it is, yeah. We saw in that first game, I think it was Fredoxy, wasn't it, that went down earlier on. A lot of questions are like, actually, how did that happen? They then, of course, had that knock-on effect where they had to reboot. Then Marius went down. Then Fredoxy was trying to solo clutch, trying to get surge. Didn't happen. It was a complete mess for them in that first game. But this time, they were looking so much stronger, Takata. They were claiming that high ground. We were like, is this finally their time to get this win? And it all just kind of crumbled. We didn't actually see what happened to them on the screen, but it looks as though there was just a couple of teams trying to play for that height in the end. And although it was a little bit better than that last game, it's still not the greatest for them. So they still have to climb the leaderboard.
It's interesting because it's like a team that has really high expectations, but then you don't, like, they're 19th on the leaderboard. This is not a duo that I want to see 19th on the leaderboard, considering when we think back to 2025, some of the best trios in the world. But duos come around, it's just not going their way. We'll see as it continues. But back here on page 1, there's another duo that I'm kind of looking at that also I feel like should be a bit higher, and it's that number 10 spot, Merstash and Tayson. 74 points. I mean, this is Merstash and Tayson, some of the veterans of the lobby. And what's interesting is everything was going their way except for one thing. Going in 6th zone, they had amazing loot and amazing positioning. They pulled the zone, but they were below on surge. Good news is when you got Merstash knocking on your door, you know he can get the job done. They got the surge they needed, but crumbled apart a bit later in the end game. Not sure what happened to Tayson, but great clutch from Merstash, getting a 2nd place, 5 eliminations. Honestly, jumping up 20 spots, you cannot be mad about that.
Yeah,
exactly. Move over 2025. I want 2023 vibes back in here, Mini Miner. Sorry to interrupt you there.
You know, I mean, it's exactly what I was going to say. The ways that Mustash's teams often end up performing well in FNCSs and sort of majors previously is when Mustache is making those big solo clutch plays. We often talked about it sort of previously. It was like a major one Mustache thing. He was always popping off at the beginning of the year and sort of solo carrying his team all the way through those difficult end games. So if that's the Mustache we're going to get this season, his ability to sort of pick up the pieces, squeeze out those few extra placements, then this could be a really, really great season for Tayson and Mustache. It's just about putting themselves in that position, which they couldn't do in that first game.
Well, you know who was putting themselves into a good position? Yanis, with more eliminations than Rax in Game 2. This is a duo that didn't do as well as they wanted to in Game 2, but the signs are so promising, and I feel like consistency is going to be a guarantee for them to qualify if they can keep this up, Takata.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they're top 10 right now. If you discard the 2 people who have already won, that drops them down to 7th, right? So it's looking very good for Yanis and Rax right now. I think they're going to keep the momentum going, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if things go a little better their way and we see them winning a match.
Demas and Dom here on the low ground. Weirdly, for them, we were looking at them and we were going, hang on a second, why have they got not more eliminations than this? They're in so many fights, Mini Miner.
Yeah, it just seemed like they weren't just getting the most out of those fights, wasn't it? They just seemed to sort of limp their way over to this end game and unfortunately not find as much of the success that we'd expect from them in that end game. And that's what I was sort of speaking about before the break. It was that these sort of teams weren't finding themselves in the latter stage of the end game. So low ground was a lot more free. But like I said in that previous game after that one, there's definitely more to see of Dharm and Demus. I'm sure we'll be seeing plenty of them in that end game.
And the other thing about them now is they've got a kind of feel for the lobby, and the same goes for all of our duos here. And I think this is where the experience is really going to shine through, Mini, because that's when these duos have assessed the risks, the rewards, and who potentially is going to be challenging them for height.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going to be the big question now. Who's going to be going up for that height? We saw it a lot more messy in that last game. Of course, Vika Malabuka held onto it so well in that first game, pretty much perfectly. So, you know, it's not quite got that height dominant team yet, but maybe we'll start to see that established.
Yes, and maybe we will see another underrated duo take a victory royale like we did in Heat 1 yesterday. Let's head over now to 11-2K and tackle for Game 3.
One thing's for sure, Frankie, if Hedra and Lixium keep looking for height at the way they were trying to establish it towards the end of that secondary lobby, we might just see them as one of the underrated teams to bring home a victory royale. And I'm sure the French community will be very excited for Lixium in that standard. But Levin, reaching the halfway point here, game number 3 on the horizon. And there are some teams who definitely have had a little bit more of a roller coaster in today's competition, but we'll get a chance to see whether or not they smooth things out here in game 3.
Absolutely. Game number 3, you gotta start to pick up the pace. I think yesterday in Heat 1, we saw a lot of things sort of swing in the other direction, whether that be off spawn or who had the momentum in endgame. Della and Alec coming off the back of an impressive game number 2, we'll be looking to keep things rolling.
Something else that's going to start taking place here soon enough, though, is a lot of these spots on the map, whether they were contested to start with or whether they haven't been contested, teams are going to start trying to make those micro adjustments to their game plan. Trulix and Faded opening up with a pretty big one here, not going for the immediate 50-50 against the likes of Ferdy, and makes sense given that you want the opportunity to try and play out the end game. Different scenario here though for Fruzy and Kenti, just looking to get their first elimination on the board here. Second already in tow, and a good cleanup at their drop to claim the space.
Yeah, but the fighting continues. Cringe and Volko have already picked one up. And I think when you look at the HP situation, you probably will understand why they're not looking to chase down the second. Need some shields, need some HP. Here at the new Sanctuary, they will find it eventually.
Could be tough though. Even when you have those early successes, there's no guarantees that there won't just be a third party looming in the distance, looking for the chance to try and punish you while you're distracted. For Mustache and Tayson though, still having full ball control here at Sinister Strip, and they still have company in the POI. Granted, they haven't been looking for the immediate off-spawn fight to kick things off in any of these lobbies, Levin, but there was definitely a time where you look at Mustache, you look at Tayson, you would never imagine that teams would dare to go anywhere near where these guys are at. And yet, here at Sinister Strip, they find themselves being potentially unconned, potentially conned. It just seems to vary game per lobby.
Yeah, I mean, both of them have been involved in some of the most entertaining off-spawn battles we've seen in EU history over the years. I think regardless of what ends up happening here today, if they are able to make it through to the finals, there's a good chance they'll be contested, and so maybe a sneak peek at how they're able to handle that here in 2026. Trippin and Anas, similar to what we saw last game, just trying to quickly get out of the Heatwave Harbor area. They don't want to mess with Janice and Rax too much. Making sure to get their metal while they go.
Certainly been going a little bit on tour here now, though, with Darm and Deemish. They're not looking to just scrape by in the end games. They want to be set up, ready. But first, they've got to contend, seeing whether or not they can clear up Shayla's on his last legs, but just a complete turnaround here. Momentary, though. Fortunately for Deemish, there is backup in the form of his duo, but Tradox and Shaywaz, that was a bit of a devastating blow there for Darm and Deemish. It'll send Darm packing, doesn't want to take any unnecessary risk. He'll opt to look for the reboot instead.
This ain't the Diamond Deemish I know. This ain't my Diamond Deemish. My Diamond Deemish, they're scrappy in the fights. They take their ones. They have the end game fundamentals. Today it's just looked a bit But let's take a look. What happened there? Well, how did Deemish go down so easily? So Shaywaz comes through the little yeah, you won't want us to replay that one. Dom did well to get the trade though. He was ready to get back involved. So both teams will get back to full standing soon. Who we have here? Janice and Rax looking to get scrappy.
Even a bit of a chase right now, but Panzer hoping they don't actually get a chance to play catch up. Fortunately for him, not going to be an escape route to actually apply here. 2 eliminations now for Yanis and Rax, and Yapko and Panzer could definitely complicate things, given that these first 2 lobbies haven't necessarily gone out the way that they would have initially intended. They were already kind of skirting that mid area of the leaderboard, and down to just push them even further, still having to depend a lot on this secondary half of today's competition. See whether or not they'll be able to recover for that placement consistency metric or even a victory royale. Wonkyland also still